It's the government's biggest climate policy decision in a decade. The looming question of what Australia's internationally binding 2035 emissions target should be. But for now, all the attention is on the opposition.
What net zero has become is about trying to achieve the impossible rather than doing something sensible.
Over the weekend, David Littleproud backed a grassroots Queensland LNP move to dump support for net zero by mid-century, putting the opposition leader, desperate to rebuild the Liberal Party's inner city stocks, in a bind.
Too many voters, particularly in our urban centres, could not see themselves in today's Liberal Party. That must change. We must modernise. We must broaden our appeal. We must reflect the country we seek to govern.
Repeal Net Zero Bill 2025.
Labor today used the division to allow a rare debate on Barnaby Joyce's private members bill to scrap the target.
We have a government in Australia that is engaging in one of the greatest acts of economic self-sabotage in the history of the nation.
This is their desperate attempt to cling onto the keystone policy of my predecessor, despite it being shot down by Australians at the election.
If you get rid of net zero, you are saying climate change is not real, and you do not need to do anything about it.
The man behind the push says the government has the wrong priorities.
What did the Prime Minister say about those in poverty? What do you say about those who can't afford their power bills? What do you say about manufacturing leaving Australia?
Climate policy is political kryptonite for the opposition. Not unlike Labor's devastating post-war split over the influence of the Communist Party, divisions over climate action threaten to render the coalition unelectable. But the opposition's internal dispute is also diverting attention from Labor's emissions performance.
What concerns me so much about their strategy, about us talking about ourselves, is it's actually the weakest part of this government, their failure on this. Yet somehow we're here talking about ourselves, and the focus really needs to be put back on the government.
Despite a flood of new policies and subsidies to the energy industry, Australia's overall emissions performance has stalled. Climate pollution is 28% lower than in 2005, the country's internationally accepted baseline year. But that's essentially the same level as when Labor came to power in 2022.
The 2030 target is a 43% reduction, and it's going to be a steep hill to climb to 2030 to achieve that target.
ANU economist Frank Iozzo is an advisor on climate policy to the government, which is working on its 2035 target, expected to be made public within weeks. The Climate Change Authority has indicated it's looking to recommend a cut of between 65 and 75%.
Anything with a 6 in front of it will be enormously ambitious, given where we are at and given that there's only 10 years in order to achieve those kinds of emissions reductions.
Climate groups are pushing the government to adopt a more ambitious target. And tomorrow, a group of almost 400 companies, including tech giant Atlassian and Andrew Forrest's Fortescue, will back a 75% cut to emissions.
To date, a lot of the conversations have been around the politics and the negative aspects of it, and not considering enough the positives for economic growth and productivity.
The group, which calls itself Business for 75, has asked Deloitte to calculate the benefits of moving faster.
What our modelling shows is that the 75% target by 2035 brings forward a big load of business investment that helps us get to that achievement of net zero in the least cost way.
It found that doing so will give the country a competitive advantage, more economic activity and jobs, all while bringing forward the day when energy bills become less painful.
It's clear that medium to longer term investment in a greener economy will result in lower energy prices because wind and solar are inherently very, very cheap.
The Prime Minister will soon travel to New York for the UN General Assembly, where many countries will reveal their 2035 targets. From an international standpoint, Australia matters more than usual, not least because the government is bidding to host next year's climate summit in Adelaide. Anthony Albanese will also be visiting Pacific Islands early in September, where climate impacts are high on the agenda.
Countries will always argue with each other about who should do how much. The fact of the matter, though, is we are one of the richest countries on Earth and we're one of the highest carbon-emitting countries per capita.
For many in the government, the scars are still fresh from the climate wars. that helped doom Kevin Rudd, Julia Gillard, Tony Abbott, Malcolm Turnbull and Scott Morrison.
A lot of our conversation to date has been in the realm of politics and not in economics. If we do nothing about climate change, if the rest of the world does nothing on climate change, then there are major impulse on the Australian economy. We'll see more of the ravages of physical damages of climate change translating into economic ones.
An ambitious 2035 target could send a strong signal of resolve to global investors and voters alike. But if the government does go for a softer target, it can still say it's doing more than anything the opposition is promising.
Nothing unites them as much as saying to regional Australia, we will do nothing about the challenge of climate change, which will see droughts and natural disasters increase their damage across regional Australia. That's why regional Australia looks to this side of the House for leadership when it comes to climate.